Hello and welcome to the Least Haunted Podcast, a place where science, skepticism, humor, and anthropology meet to discuss all things spooky, haunting, supernatural, and sometimes just the plain ridiculous. I'm your host, Cody Franks, and joining me, as almost always, is the quietly quoting, quickly quivering questions of quaint, quixotic quality, quizzically questing in quandary, quantifiably qualified...
Garth. Was that quixotic? Was that a word in there?
Okay, this came up on the Discord because this was generated on our Discord in the Garth's Moniker thread.
Right.
I insist that since it's based on Don Quixote, it should be pronounced quixotic or Quixotic.
Right.
That makes sense.
That's what I heard you. I heard you skip the X. I thought. Okay.
But apparently the official thing is quixotic. It's supposed to rhyme with exotic, and that's just ridiculous.
I've heard
it's
quixotic. Yeah,
he's Don Quixote.
Right.
So it's
you want consistency.
And I will die on this hill.
Well,
I will die on this hill.
You know what? Joining me for the second time is Elizabeth Kile. Say hi, Elizabeth.
Hi.
We got a guest. This is a 3-person episode.
Should I say more? Hello. Thank you for having me. Yes, so nice to see you guys.
I was going to apologize for pulling you in right in the middle of a argument about quixotic or whatever.
Well, that to me sounds like an example of British people just kind of running over everybody else's language and pronunciation. So
yeah,
because they invented it, they know the right way to. Yeah.
Sure. Right.
Oh, I've got balloons. How did that happen?
Why are there balloons on your screen?
I don't know. A bunch of balloons. Okay, so everybody listening at home who is not watching this, we're talking through Zoom. And for some reason, a bunch of balloons appeared on my screen. Maybe when you say something, does that trigger balloons? I don't know.
That
anyway,
would really weird me out. Anyway, yeah. Thank you for coming back on. We had you on about almost a year ago exactly.
Yes.
Wow.
And in that time, we were talking about your book, Haunted San Jose.
Yes.
And how's the book thing going? Still good?
Yeah, it's going well. So September and October are really busy months for me. I kind of self-promote throughout the rest of the year, but then in September, the calls for interviews and presentations, they really start coming from people. So this is my season.
I don't know if we want to talk about it now, but you've got a thing coming up on the 21st of this month?
I do. I've been invited to speak at the Winchester Mystery House. It's part of their centennial speaker series, having one local each month. I get the month of October, which is super cool. And I'll be talking Saturday, October 21st at 2 p.m. Tickets are on the website. I'll be talking about tropes in ghost stories. And if you don't know what tropes are, it sounds really academic, but I promise you do know what they are.
Oh, yeah. Garth and I are going to be there.
Yes, we're planning to be there. So
that's exciting.
If you're in the Bay Area, come to the Winchester Mystery House on, what was it, October 21st?
First, yes.
21st, 2 o'clock.
Tickets are on sale on their website. It's only $5 a ticket, which is a great deal. I've already convinced a few of my friends to get tickets, and they're going to go too.
Oh, cool.
And so, if you're in the Bay Area, that'll be like a week from tomorrow if you're listening to this on release day. Come on down. Hear the talk, and then also get a chance to see me and Garth. Maybe we'll bring some shirts we can sell out of the trunk of my car.
Be really shady about it. Like, all right, come to my car. Okay, here's the trunk. Open the trunk.
We got stickers, we got buttons, we got shirts. What do you want? So this time, though, having you back in, it's because it's come to my attention that you are currently going through the process of getting certificates for parapsychology.
Yes, I am earning my professional certificate in investigating the paranormal, so whatever that means.
Yeah.
What institution provides this certificate?
I'm doing this through the Rhine Education Center, and I'm sure that Cody, you'll tell us a little bit about the history of this, but it's an online program, so it's available to anybody. And in fact, there are people from all over the world who are in these online classes, which is pretty cool. It's a pretty cool way to meet people who are like-minded,
Yeah.
Yeah, I went to their website and checked it out, and we'll get into that a little bit later, but just learning about the origin of it and stuff. But my first impression was it's like a community college. Like, this is structured exactly like my old community college website,
Yes, yeah.
So it's like, I took, there's all kinds of classes you can take at the Rhine Center. Oh, at least it changes, it seems seasonally. Like this semester or quarter that's about to start only has a handful.
Right, they have different offerings each quarter or whatever. And I have to say, I am a public high school teacher. I am fully credentialed. I went through all, all the requirements. The Ryan Center is not an accredited institution.
Yeah.
I just have to throw that out there. Yes.
Although its origins actually are linked to a real institution. And I guess we'll talk about that right now. So the Rhine Institute, it's named after its founder, Joseph Banks Rhine, or J.B. Rhine. He is considered the father of parapsychology, or at least as it's termed now, and as a air quote science that it is now. I don't want to be offensive. I'm sorry.
Those are fighting air quotes there.
So here's the thing: is that I am, as everybody knows, a skeptic. And so the idea of an institution that is credentials in a thing that I don't believe in, but I do want to approach it also from the mind of an anthropologist. I wouldn't go into some culture and start pointing to all their stuff and like, that's wrong, without understanding. Well, even when I did understand, but you got to kind of take it from its own rules. And so I can see that approach where it's like, okay, no, let's look at this objectively from how it's set up. So J.B. Rhine, born in 1895, he was born in Waterloo, Pennsylvania, and to a poor farmer family, or at least poor rural folk. He was originally going to join the ministry. He was a very religious guy, but his wife kind of talked him out of it. His wife, Louisa, was like, no, you should get into science, like get into botany. And he's like, yeah, that's a good idea. So after a short stint in the Marines, he then starts his education in botany. He receives a PhD in botany from Chicago University. But then in May of 1922, he and his wife, Louisa, attend a lecture by a very famous person who was touring the United States at that time, to talk about spiritualism and communication with the dead. Any guesses on who that person was?
Ooh.
Trivia. Pop quiz.
What, remind me what year this was?
1922. Okay,
1922.
Prominent spiritualist, not American, but touring in America.
Who would be a spiritualist touring in America in the 20s?
Oh, do you know?
No, give Garth a chance, Beth, and then we'll see.
No. Go for it.
Sir Arthur Conan Doyle?
Exactly.
Nice. So, I would have thought he was a little before that. Okay. Yeah, good.
So, just got to think about, like, the father of, and we've talked about this before, the father of Sherlock Holmes, who was supposedly, like, he's the archetypical investigator only concerned with the facts. But the guy who created him, way into spiritualism and the supernatural, and also somewhat gullible in the sense that, like, he fell for some very obvious scams.
Stuff that Sherlock Holmes would never fall for.
For example, we'll do an episode at some point on the Coddington Ferries, which was a hoax. And you look at these pictures now, you're like, yeah, it's so obvious that is not real. But he was a believer. He was like, yeah, okay. So anyway, J.B. Rhine and his wife, they go to this lecture. It piques their interest in spiritualism. Because even though, like, he is a scientist, he feels that there are certain things that science doesn't address, things that he wants to know. He just is hungry for more. And so he and his wife, they, like, sell everything they own and move to Boston.
Wow.
And he ends up studying under a psychologist named William McDougall, who is a huge name in psychology at the time. Remember, this is also psychology, still pretty early. This is right after Sigmund Freud. So he studies under him, and then William McDougall ends up moving to the new Duke University, because Duke University was a young institution at that time, to set up their psychology lab. J.B. Rhine goes with him and starts teaching psychology, even though he himself does not have a degree in psychology. He's a botanist. And then together at Duke University, they form the Parapsychology Laboratory. So there'd been this kind of study into psychic phenomenon for a while. We talked about the Society for Psychical Research in England and Harry Price, people who were trying to put it in a scientific framework to make it more credible, I guess, or at least to get actual science on it because they really believed this was real and they wanted to collect the evidence. So it is actually J.B. Rhine at this time. He takes an earlier German guy's name for this field, which was Parapsychology in German. And then he like adapts it and says, no, we're not going to call this psychical research anymore. That's too silly. This is parapsychology, meaning alongside Greek, alongside psychology. So it's a sibling science to psychology because if the idea is that, actually, okay, hold on. This isn't about ghosts. I got to get that out of the way.
Oh.
That's a misconception that I am guilty of myself in the past, is that parapsychology is about ghosts. It does have some overlap, but really it's primarily concerned with psychical abilities, like psychics, telecommunication with the mind, remote viewing, ESP. In fact, J.B. Rhine is the guy who creates the term extrasensory perception, ESP. So they're not looking at ghost stuff. And so the idea is that all these phenomena, psychic phenomena, are coming from the human brain or body. It's an extension of our psychology. So that's why they decided to study it in this way.
Okay.
Does that make
Got
sense?
it. Yeah,
okay. And feel free, anybody, to jump in at any time. Beth, if you've got some stuff that you want to like put in, jump on in. While he's at Duke University and setting up this laboratory, he becomes friends with a colleague there, a guy named Carl Zener.
Oh, this name rings a bell.
Yeah, so Zener cards.
That's it. Yeah.
So the beginning of Ghostbusters,
Yes.
When Dr. Venkman is being a sexual predator and is being really creepy, and he's like throwing the whole experiment because he's trying to get in this girl's pants. Those are Zener cards.
Right.
I want to point out in that movie, the guy he keeps electrocuting is right. He's actually predicting, if you go back and watch it, he's predicting 2 cards out. So he's actually guessing correct. And so the guy, Dr. Venkman, terrible scientist, ignores the evidence in front of him, like, hey, there's something going on here because he's too preoccupied. Anyway, Zener cards, they've been around for a while. What happens is that, Ryan wants to find some way to do a replicable test that can be controlled to see if anybody has any psychic ability. He was using playing cards, but what he found out was that people have their favorite playing cards. You just have it. It's like a bias that you have.
Oh.
And so they kept repeatedly predicting the same card, and it was wrong. And he's like, okay, we got to get some way to get you over this hurdle. We need a whole new set of cards with symbols that the person has no preconceived attachment to. So he goes and talks to his buddy Zener. He's like, hey, who's a psychologist, can you come up with this? Zener was actually working on behavioral psychology and the idea that people pick up, or actually I think he was testing on animals, that they pick up on subconscious cues from the person giving the test, and that gives them answers. This is something sometimes called the clever Hans phenomenon.
I was about to say, that's like that horse that could do math.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, clever Hans the horse. And so he was like, yeah, there's people picking up on these cues somehow, or they have these associations with cards. Just design something for me. So Zener's like, okay. So he comes up with 5 symbols that supposedly nobody would have any preconceived attachment to. And that was a circle, a square, 3 wavy lines, a 5-pointed star, and they call it a cross, but really it's more like a plus sign, because if it was a cross, it wouldn't be... I was like, yeah, if you call it an actual cross, I'm pretty sure people have preconceived attachments to the cross.
Yeah, that would be the trick about making cards like that, where nobody has, is biased toward a certain symbol. So you'd want to keep it really abstract and not like representative of something else.
Yeah.
I mean, my favorite would be the wavy card. I'll just say right now. So I don't know if that would work on me. I'd always be picking the wavy card because that's obviously the best.
Well, we're going to actually have a chance to test this, Garth, because I'm really excited. As of like an hour ago, I won an eBay auction.
No way.
An original 1937 set of Duke University Zener cards.
Wow.
Really? So can we do this? We should do like a video and like basically do the Ghostbusters thing, but for real.
Oh no, I was actually thinking that we need to get electric shock and everything.
Yeah.
Which is actually something that Ryan never electrocuted people, as far as I know.
My cats have these collars so they don't run into the road. I can set it to the highest thing, and then I'll wrap it around my wrist, and then we'll just take the wire, and you just bring it toward me, and you can shock me that way.
Oh.
It's not that bad.
Wow,
It's not
okay.
that bad. I've tried it, of
okay.
course, on myself. I don't want to hurt my kitties. It's not that bad.
So yeah, I've got a deck coming. They actually they became very popular to the point where they were mass produced, and they sold for about 10 cents a pack, and you could buy them at newsstands because everybody was into this. Also at the time, J.B. Ryan is publishing books on ESP and psychic studies and parapsychology, and those are actually becoming popular and selling. So the set of Zener cards, it's 25 cards, 5 cards of each of the designs. And so it's like, what's the probability that you could just guess them, right? The
1 in
probability
5.
of 1 in 5 for the first guess, but then you remove the cards, and so the probability starts to change.
Yeah.
But so the probability of guessing 8 or more correctly, I guess that was like what they considered interesting. He has like, it kind of goes in the scale. It's like
it's like
so
this
many...
is beyond random.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's 10.9% is just that you could guess 8, and then chances of getting 15 correct is 1 in 90,000. If you got 20 out of 25 correct, the probability is 1 in 5 billion that you could do that. Ryan claims that at one point somebody he tested got 25 for 25. But we're going to get into, there's some...
It's possible.
Yeah, there's a lot of critics of his studies. In 1931, he conducted 10,000 tests with 63 students with the Zener cards. He said that they scored better than chance. But also, it's like probability and statistics. If you're just doing that much data,
it's a bell curve, yeah.
So, it's questionable. Also, none of his tests at this point were replicable, or at least haven't been replicated by people who weren't Ryan trying to do this. He was also doing other things besides just using the cards. Zener eventually wanted nothing to do with this. He said, please stop calling them Zener cards. And so the deck that I got doesn't say Zener on it, but it does say ESP testing cards, patented by J.B. Ryan. And it says Duke University Parapsychology Lab. But Zener eventually became the chair of the actual psychology department.
Oh, that's why he wanted to disassociate because he was embarrassed.
Yeah, pretty much. He's like, okay, I don't want to be associated with this anymore. Stop calling them that. But we still call them Zener cards. I mean, I have been. So, other tests he did was dice. He would have people roll dice in different ways, sometimes with their hands, sometimes with cups, eventually developing a machine that would throw the die. And the idea was that the test subject was going to try to influence how those dice would land. I don't know how well that test fared. There's been questions about his methodology on that, is that they never replaced the dice. They just kept using the same ones over and over again. And even in casinos, they retire dice at the craps table fairly regularly because of the repeated use of them. They said they can get minute wear on them just from rubbing on the table.
What? And then it's not random.
Level.
Wow.
And over time, that affects it. So let that be a lesson to anybody who criticizes your D&D playing friends for the hundreds and hundreds of dice they have. You got to change out your D&D dice probably too every so often. One of the things that got Ryan originally so interested in psychic ability in particular was once he got into spiritualism, he started investigating mediums. He would go to seances and, sorry, it's time of the day where the sun comes right through the window behind me.
Oh, that's all right, man. Yeah. So for everyone listening at home, Cody's holding his hand up over the light, and he has been doing so for minutes now. And I was about to tell you, it's cool, dude. Like, we can still see. Yeah, it's fine.
Okay,
you just look like you're an angelic being now. You're backlit, and there's like rays. It's cool.
I am Cody the White.
This is Cody. Yeah, exactly. I come to you now at the turn of the tide.
So he started investigating, him and Louisa, they started investigating psychics and going to seances. And they went to one notable psychic. I didn't write down her name. But
not that notable.
No, well, I mean... Hey everyone, this is Cody from the future. So the psychic medium's name is Mina Crandon. And I think after looking this up again and double checking, she is definitely going to have to get her own episode of Least Haunted at some point. So look forward to Mina Crandon, although you're about to get a spoiler on how part of the story ends. They sat in the seance with this supposedly famous psychic, and afterwards they wrote a report together, his wife and himself, which is funny that, like, a lot of the stuff, if you read up on Wikipedia articles about him, they don't mention Louisa, even though it seems that she was integral to, like, every step of the process that he's going through. She's the one that kind of directed him into science. The two of them start investigating psychics together. But anyway, this one medium, they catch her, basically. They're like, no, there's some fraud going on here, and here's our report on why she is a fraud. And this pissed off everybody, including Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, who said that Rhine was a hack and had no merit whatsoever. So, like, the guy that got eventually, like, your hero. Like, if when we had, for example, if when we had Justin McElroy on this show, and that's one of the people who inspired me to become a podcaster, and he just told me straight out, like, no, you suck. You're terrible at this.
Your podcast is awful.
That'd be devastating. And that's pretty much what happened to Rhine. Which is also why he had more to lose, why he wanted to do this more scientifically, to kind of justify, it's like, no, like, I actually am doing science here. When I say this person's fake, they're fake, but also I'm looking for real stuff too. So investigating another medium, he came to the conclusion that the medium actually wasn't talking to the dead. What was really going on is the person who went to that medium was broadcasting their thoughts telepathically into the medium, who was a receiver. And this was actually how they knew things they shouldn't have known. I'm not that, it was any chance it could have been, I don't know, cold reading or any number of other things that could have been going on here. That's his conclusion, and that's kind of what led him into, like, going all in, like, ghosts. No, ghosts aren't real. What is real is human psychic abilities.
It's a fascinating distinction, because I always think of people who are interested in this stuff as being all in on all of it or none of it. But the idea that they're, like, explaining a thing about, like, ghosts aren't real, here's the real explanation, and it's this other, like, parascientific thing. Yeah. It's interesting.
Yeah, I've thought about this with, like, the overlap between people who believe in ghosts and the people who believe in aliens. And they somehow try to, like, create this unified theory that ties the two things together, where it's like, oh no, maybe, like, ghosts and aliens are also interdimensional beings. It's like, just pick a lane and stay in it right now.
And I have to say, from my own perspective, I'm the opposite of Ryan. So while I might believe in the possibility of ghosts and hauntings, I don't actually believe in ESP. That's where they tend to lose me a little bit.
That's really interesting, because I was imagining it as, like, a series of levels, and anyone who would believe in one might not the other, but it wouldn't go the other way. But you are the opposite. So interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, I find that very fascinating. I mean, they are distinctly different concepts, so I guess there's no reason that people would believe in one versus the other. But yeah, I found that fascinating.
Yeah, but keep in mind that he started out, before he got into science, he was going to go into the ministry. So he already has, like, spiritual beliefs ingrained in him, and a belief in the afterlife, which was kind of what pulled him towards Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. He's like, okay, and then he's now. It's like, as people, they progress. Your thoughts about how this all works changes over time, but there are still a lot of people who will. It's still tied to religion. Like, if you go on some of the subreddits and you see, like, some of the ghost things that people put out there, and you're like, there's an angle here. Like, you're like, you have an objective, and you start digging into some of the stuff. And you're like, okay, like, the only other things this person posts about are, like, guardian angels, and it's like, okay, so. I don't know where I'm going with this, but it's a
belief in one thing informing belief in another, even if they would seem to be unrelated, I guess. Yeah.
The Parapsychology laboratory at Duke University gets some funding from the U.S. government. But keep in mind, this is, like, all in the 1930s and into the 40s. He retires in 1962. Early 60s, he retires from Duke University. the money starts to dry up, basically, because the U.S. government's like, look, if you're not delivering results, we want to be able to use this for, like, Project Stargate stuff.
How can we use this against the Russians? Well, I guess if that's post-1945.
Yeah. And so when that doesn't really yield any results, the funding starts to dry up. And so after he retires, the department ceases to exist at Duke University. They're like, yeah, we're not going to talk. They'll talk about how they used to do it, but now they're like, we've moved on to real stuff. But he's still not done. Even though he's retired from academic institution, he's like, well, I'll start my own institution. And he founds the... it's not called the Rhine Institute yet, or the Rhine Center. It is the Foundation for Research on the Nature of Man.
FRNM. Oh, okay.
M? FR, yeah, and M.
I was thinking there'd be an acronym in there, but no. It's all consonants.
Yeah. And then over time, that I think after his death, he dies in 1980, or 1981. I had that. What was it? Yeah, 1980. They rename it into the Rhine Center, the Rhine Research Center. Excuse me, the Rhine Research Center, which it continues to operate as today. And now we can talk, Beth, more about your experience with the Rhine Center.
I am so fascinated to hear what these courses you're taking are like, and everything. Yeah, please tell us.
I learned a lot from you, Cody. I didn't know half that stuff, about J.B. Bryan and all that. So that was very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, they don't have that history of the course, I guess.
Maybe that's the part I tuned out. I don't know. I just choose to listen to what I'm really interested in. So
I any college student can relate. I tuned out so many times at college. Well, some of the courses, I've got a list of the courses that are available this upcoming quarter, semester. Are they quarters or semesters, or they just call it sessions?
I don't really know their sessions. So the full-length courses are 8 weeks. Those usually happen in the spring and the fall, and then they have 4-week courses in the winter and the summer. So I don't know what you call that.
Yeah, quarter. That sounds like a quarter. Okay. Well, this quarter, you can take Paranormal Phenomena, EVP, ITC, which is Instrumental Telecommunication, or I forget what the acronym initialism is, and Technology. Is a 4-week course for $119. I'm going to include the price tags on this just because okay, so you can take that. Then you can take Introduction to Parapsychology for $199. Advanced Field Investigation, $249. 8 important studies in parapsychology. Each week they'll cover a different one. Some of them are things that I already talked about here. They go over the Zener cards and some of Ryan's experiments. That's $225. Paranormal case studies, $245, and remote viewing, remote course, of course, for $119. And all those courses, though, but here's the thing is, there are discount rates. If you are a member of the Rhine Center, you get it's like $20 off each course. But like that's comparable to what you'd pay at a community college, maybe, if you factored in tuition. I don't know. It's been a while.
Isn't community college free now? I feel like
it should be.
I think it is.
Okay. Theoretically, it is, but I think people do pay a little bit. Yeah.
Well, now you've given away like how much I've spent on all these classes I'm taking. So
I don't want to. I'm sorry. I don't want to.
I'm 6 classes deep into my 8 class certificate, so that's okay. That's all right.
But this is stuff you're interested in, so that's it's well worth it because you're interested in it. Yeah, that's
and that's where I gotta tread lightly because, again,
I feel like you're holding back on saying something, Cody.
Well, I want to give the benefit of the doubt because if the Rhine Center is run by people who actually believe that this is all real, and the people who are paying for it also believe this is all real, then there's not really much harm being done. Mm-hmm. But what if the Rhine Center are people who, after 87 years of this parapsychological research in the Rhine tradition, haven't found any evidence, and maybe they don't believe it's real, but they're still going to take money to give people a certificate in it. then it's like, okay, that's
maybe, but I mean, look at it this way:
objectionable.
what if you had someone who was a really good teacher and taught like evolutionary biology, but actually didn't believe in evolution, but was still a good teacher? Would it matter if they believed? As long as they're sharing the information, it almost doesn't matter.
But in that case, evolutionary biology is real, Garth.
I know, but I'm saying
Objectively real.
The reason I gave that as an example is it doesn't matter what the teacher believes as long as they're disseminating the information to people who.
Okay.
I don't know, I'm trying to play devil's advocate here.
Or what if they? I mean, it could also be people who didn't believe, but now they do.
Sure, sure. It could be a lot of
I don't-
things.
it's just-
Let's give them the benefit of the doubt and assume that they are all on board.
One of the reasons that I was drawn to this institution, I don't know if there are others. I didn't really do my research. I just kind of stumbled across this one. But one of the instructors, I've actually only taken classes with him. I have a lot of respect for him. He's local. He's from the Bay Area. He's been involved with investigations in the area for like decades. So I really trust, as far as I can. I don't know him personally very well, but I really trust his like ethos and his credibility.
Nice.
Yeah.
So if I thought that somebody was teaching kind of fraudulently, I'm not sure I would be as drawn to that institution.
Yeah.
And then the director of the institution now, John Kruth, he's really involved in kind of the hands-on research at the Rhine Center, and he really believes in what he's doing. Right? Like he's really dedicated to advancing the field, even though it hasn't really advanced much in the past 100 years.
That's really important, though, especially for something that is a little more niche and maybe not everybody would believe it. You want to have that trust with your instructor that they're on board. Right. Otherwise, I mean, even more so than some more standard type classes you would take at a regular college, I think. So that's good. I'm glad you like your instructors and they're like passionate about it.
Right.
And they are doing. They're still doing research, and they have several long ongoing projects that they're working on. They've moved into certain other kind of fields, and that research is funded by the tuition costs. So I don't want this to seem like it's not a for-profit university.
That's a very important point to make.
That's a distinction too. It's like, no, this is like a group that is funding the development of their science, or what they believe is their science, through they need to do research, and research costs money. And whether or not you believe that research is worthwhile doesn't mean that it doesn't still cost money. So
they also offer a course called A Skeptical Approach to Parapsychology, which I took in the spring. And for that one, they bring in another instructor who is Kenny Biddle. I don't know if you're familiar with him. But he is a true skeptic. He does not believe in the paranormal. He runs the Skeptical Inquirer, and he publishes a lot. Yeah. Okay. So he might be somebody that you want to kind of
that's super interesting that they would provide that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. So, that's very fascinating.
To be fair, I got my degree in anthropology, which includes human evolution, at a Catholic university. So
there you go.
I guess I should have like kind of brought that up when I was criticizing them from the get-go.
Right. But it's interesting to see both sides of it, right? We're studying this pseudoscience, right? And we have this person who firmly believes it is a pseudoscience, and just
I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, it was fun. It was actually a really entertaining class just to look at it from a different angle.
Some of the other areas that they're researching now are bioenergies and the bioelectrical field around human beings, and I started to kind of dip just into like their page on that, and it's like talking about using human energy fields for healing purposes, and right away I was like, nope, that's a hard no for me. I'm gonna back out of that and just pretend I didn't see that. And then there's telekinesis, so like and they're like actual image they use is a jar full of bent spoons. So it's like, are we still on the bent spoons? Not Yuri Gagarin. Yuri Geller.
Yuri Gagarin and his bent spoons.
There we go. Yeah, one's a case of a man in space, the other's a space case man. Got it.
Nice. I'm curious to hear more about these classes that you've taken, though. So, like, what are you working on? Like, what are you in the middle of classes right now?
So the new one just started this week. I'm taking advanced field investigations. So I took the introduction to field investigations. a year or so ago, and that's when they talk about the differences between hauntings, apparitions, poltergeists.
Oh
Talk
yeah,
about
we've covered that.
strategies, and I'll be covering that at my talk at the Winchester House
Oh,
on the
nice.
21st. Yeah, and they talk about how to, ghost hunting is not what you see on TV. Right. I don't know if you guys have
Right.
talked about that before, but it's absolutely not what you see on TV. So they talk about the
Yeah.
correct way to approach an actual investigation. And it's a lot of interviewing. It's a lot of less, time sitting in a dark room and more time talking to people
Yeah.
about their experiences.
Interesting.
So, yeah.
That actually brings up a piece of methodology that I've always kind of had questions about. At least when you watch these on TV ghost shows, is that they go and they interview people and get personal stories about the place they're going to go investigate. They spend like a day beforehand or whatever getting personal accounts and the ghost story of the place. But as we established back when we talked about Harry Price in one of our earlier episodes and Borley Rectory, they've essentially salted the mine for themselves. They now have evidence that they are trying to then collect going in, where it's like, no, the proper way to do it is go and collect all your evidence in the house in the investigation. Going in blank, know nothing about it. That's objective. Then you can take that and then do these interviews and see how it matches up to it. I feel like a lot of these investigations are backwards. It's like if you already know what you're looking for, you are going to find it. But that's not how science works. You have a hypothesis, you gather the evidence, and you see if that shows anything. I just wonder if that'll come up in that class.
It might. They do talk about the problems with the way that investigations are often conducted. And that is actually my problem with the TV shows as well, right? Because they all have this narrative, right? They get this, a name, or they get some suggestion of who it is behind the hauntings. And then the entire 60 minutes is them trying to make that fit. So it all wraps up too neatly. It's too pat, too clean, right? Too much of a story.
It's for TV.
Right,
so
right.
It's got to be, right, yeah.
Right, yeah.
Like, for example, the Finding Bigfoot show. If they ever found Bigfoot, they'd be out of a job.
Right.
So they're never going to find Bigfoot.
But they're going to get close.
Yeah.
And string you along.
Yeah.
Another methodology thing, I also believe that if a place is indeed haunted, it's just as equally haunted when the lights are on or the lights are off.
Yeah. And I'll talk about that in my talk too. But I think there are people at the Rhine who actually track instances of apparitions and hauntings, and they occur more often during the day.
See?
So
there you
Whereas,
go.
because it's like, these shows, I don't know, I guess they do it obviously they're doing it in the dark for the atmosphere.
Right.
But if you're also in the dark, your eyes, as we discussed in the Bloody Mary episode and our Belmez Faces episode, in a dark light setting, your eyes and your brain are just going to start filling. Excuse me, I'm going to keep this.
It's right in front of me. It's okay.
Well, no, this one's more of a. I was thinking this is more of a general audience episode, so I'm trying to keep my profanity down.
Is this going to be the one episode that doesn't have a little E next to it in our feed?
Note that I'm not checking my notes as often on this.
Yes. Very professional, Cody.
So if we ever were, Garth, to go and do an on-location investigation,
yes,
I was going to say an overnight, because that's usually how these places they close to the public, so you get in at night. I'd still say we got to do just as much investigation with the lights on as with the lights off, because it doesn't matter. If the ghost is the ghost, it's going to be there either way.
And it's not just your eyes, when if you're normally sighted and you take that sense away, everything else starts to over exaggerate, to compensate. Noises lack directionality in the dark. Even if you do hear something, you can't tell where it's coming from reliably. Right.
Yeah. That's a course I probably would be interested in taking. Just for, because you got to learn about the actual methodologies used by the people who believe in this. If you're ever hoping to debunk it, you kind of have to know the rules to the game,
With these with these classes that you do, it's online, so there's no field trips.
No.
Oh, okay.
There's not.
Yeah, I was wondering, because I feel like for some of them it would be really useful to take the students out and be like, all right, we're gonna go into the field and actually do this. I think Beth froze, or she's holding very, very still and being very thoughtful.
Oh no, she's not blinking. Oh, there.
Oh, okay, you're back. Hello.
Was it me?
Yeah,
It froze for a second.
I said
Oh,
something,
okay. You guys froze
and
too. So.
okay, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I had just said something, and you looked really contemplative, and you were just, and I was like, I think she froze, and then it
I
like
was
caught
in
up.
my
So.
ESP trance there. I was getting communications from the
Yes.
yeah. Sorry about that.
So yeah,
Okay.
we missed the last bit of what you said. So I had brought up like it'd be interesting to do field trips. It's too bad they don't provide that because it'd be. I imagine it would be helpful to actually like bring students out and like,
Right, right.
try it for real.
Yes, yes. And I would also really enjoy that opportunity, especially since one of the instructors is local. So there's a lot of people in the Bay Area that I think would participate in that, but then you'd have to offer it, across the world essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be hard to do for an online class.
Right.
It's funny. It's like, as somebody who's not a believer, I really want to go do a ghost investigation so bad.
Yeah, you've been talking about it forever, Cody.
Well, I feel like Garth, that's a logical progression for us. We gotta throw our hat in that ring.
Yeah.
Think of all the YouTube clicks, man.
Yeah, no. Well,
content.
and the thing is, like, I'm unaware of this whole subculture of all of this ghost hunting shit. Like I've heard of these things, but you've steeped yourself in it quite a bit, Cody. Like you've watched a lot of this stuff. So yeah, no, I'd be down for that, sure.
Yeah, but yeah, again, anything we do, we need to have
gotta do it right. Yeah,
gotta do it right. Have to have a planned methodology.
Well, maybe we'll have to take that class. What other classes are you doing?
I do one per semester. It's taken me a long time. But I've done, the one that really interested me as well as a paranormal author is media, publicity, and professional presentation. So how to talk to the public about the paranormal.
Mm-hmm.
So doing interviews like this, what kinds of language to use, how to talk to audiences that might have different beliefs from your own.
Yeah.
So that was really interesting as well. I think as a teacher, I've got the, public speaking part down, but just how to talk about this topic to a variety of people, that was useful.
Yeah. Real quick, what do you think your students would think if they're like, yeah, our teacher's getting us well, they would think it was ghost hunting certificate, even though it's not really, but well,
they
know.
Do they
call you the ghost lady?
Yeah, when the book came out last year, that was kind of my reputation around campus. Even people at the district office know who I am because of the book, which is quite impressive because usually they don't know anybody on site.
Yeah.
I think my students are a little bit tired of hearing about it. I try not to self-promote too much. I think that's a little unprofessional, but they'd probably tell you that I talk about it too much. Yeah, but they think it's fun, and a lot of their parents have grown up in this area. So if I were to do a second book, I think they would be a pretty good resource for other ghost stories that I could write about.
Yeah. Let's talk about that. Have you thought about doing a follow-up?
I have, and I'm interested in doing kind of areas around San myself to just the city limits. And I know there's a ton of stories in the communities, neighboring San Jose. So I think there's enough material out there.
Oh, I'm sure there is. Yeah.
It's hard to find the time. We would need another lockdown or something where I was at home and had the time to write, and we don't want that to happen again. So it might be a while before that next book comes out.
As I've been trying to find places to go and look, it's like there's a lot, like even in your book, there's a lot of places that are public places, but there's also some that just, maybe not in your book. I can't remember. Did you talk about the Heller House?
Yes.
Yeah, right. It's like it's a private residence. You're not going to get in there, and they probably don't want you to go look at their house either.
Yeah.
So there's some difficulty getting into places, and then of course there are ones that pay to play.
Right.
Which then also kind of makes me suspicious too. Or like, if I'm going to go to an investigation, how do I know that they haven't hidden speakers or put things in there because there's a financial interest to them in this place being haunted at this point?
Right. There's also a local paranormal community in San Jose that I think they do investigations too. And they're probably not listening to this podcast, so I can probably speak freely. But then you are with people who already have their beliefs formed, right? Yeah. And they have expectations of these places they're investigating. That was always kind of my problem with the community around here. There is not a sense of skepticism or, looking for answers. There's a sense of looking for what they already want to find. And that just doesn't appeal to me.
That's something, to watch out for in all things, not just that. But I imagine that comes up a lot with paranormal investigations.
Yeah.
Oh, now Cody froze. No, it's not just you. You don't have to feel bad. I'm going to be the one to freeze next. But the thing is, he doesn't realize that he's frozen. He just, let's see how long it takes him to realize. Because I'll bet he's just going to keep going here. Oh, did you notice?
Okay, I'm back.
Okay, he's back.
I was like, oh man, they're really freezing me out.
I was just theorizing that you were gonna like tell a story and like not realize we were frozen for a while.
Oh no, I was just saying that I'm sure in a lot of these paranormal circles, I would not be very popular.
Yeah.
I mean, especially if they just like looked up my name now, they say, oh yeah, you host a skeptical podcast. Yeah, get out of here.
Yeah. Well, I'm not
you'd have
very
to have
popular,
a pseudonym,
and I believe in ghosts. So
really,
yeah.
Are you too? You're not willing to jump off the deep end as readily as they are, or something?
I think that's what it is. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I find that kind of fascinating too. So even amongst people who believe there's like you're not as ready to go for it. Like, so I guess because you have an amount of skepticism, that's really interesting.
Yeah. There's an acceptable level of skepticism,
right,
which is actually really like 0, right?
Right.
Yeah.
How are we doing on time? How you doing on time? You good?
I'm good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's see. Make sure I'm still recording. Okay, we're at 52 minutes.
Should we do an ad break?
Oh yeah. We should do an ad break. We'll just.
All right. I'm gonna we'll cut that last 30 seconds out, and
you guys always say that, and you never edit things out.
That's the joke.
Well, see, if we draw attention to it, it becomes funny, and then we have to keep it in.
Okay.
We do edit things out, but yeah, as soon as I mention that I'm going to do it, it all has to stay in. Mm-hmm. So yeah, we're gonna take a break, and we're gonna dig for some bones.
Yes.
Some paranormal bones. Some paranormal.
I'm gonna use
degrees.
I'm going to use ESP to locate said bones.
Oh, very good. There you go. Okay.
Do you like beer?
Of course you do.
Do you like good food?
You better believe it.
Then we have the show for you.
It's the Hoppy Trails Podcast.
I'm Nick.
I'm Travis. And on each episode of Hoppy Trails, we invite you to come along on our journey to explore craft beverages and the foods that accompany them.
Check out Hoppy Trails on hoppytrailspod.com or listen wherever you find your podcasts. Connect with us on Instagram at hoppytrailspod or reach out to hoppytrailspod@gmail.com. We would love to hear from you.
Come travel the Hoppy Trails with us, and remember to always say yes to the hoppy ending.
Cheers!
Did you grow up with a lack of parental supervision?
Do you know all the lyrics to The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air?
Remember Mayor McCheese and the Fry Guys?
Have an inexplicable love for the California Raisins?
Can you remember Madonna's original phase?
Then you might be a part of the Doom generation.
Laugh until you cry with us each week as we stumble blindly through the memories of the movies
and other random things
that doomed us to be the salty, sarcastic, sardonic ladies you want to hang with.
You know us, you love us, you can't f***ing live without us.
Doom Generation, available everywhere you find podcasts.
Yes, ghosts.
So I did want to talk. Well, I don't know. I was having this conversation with my husband about how to apply the scientific method to a ghost hunt, and he's a total non-believer as well. And he was arguing with me that you can't. And as somebody who has kind of a limited understanding of the scientific method, I'm trying to argue that you can, but I don't quite understand why. So,
well. Yeah. Okay.
I don't know if that's something that you're like prepared to talk about, but.
Well, what's going on?
Applying the scientific method to a ghost hunt.
Yeah.
Kind of instinctively that you could, but I can't justify. I don't know enough about it to explain why you.
Oh well, that's a really interesting thing to talk about.
Here's the Well, a lot of the techniques or equipment that's used, at least in ghost hunting today. There's no explanation for how it works. the way it's supposed to. And so even that, like, if the measuring equipments that you're using aren't readily understood, like, that makes it hard to say that's actual science. It needs to be replicatable, so you have to get, like, results repeatedly and in the same conditions over and over again. And it seems that that's real hit and miss with ghost hunting stuff, you know. People aren't getting the same evidence in the same places every time repeatedly, or with at least enough consistency that you could say something's happening. And again, I think science, you start with, you have a hypothesis, but you don't try to find evidence that proves your hypothesis. You do tests and see what the evidence bears out. And it might be that you've proved your thing wrong, and that's just what happens. Whereas a lot of the ghost hunting science starts from the position that ghosts are real. We know they're real. We're going to prove they're real. We're just like, no, you know. Although somebody could probably point at me like, well, yeah, but you believe they're not real, and you're going to prove they're not real.
Right,
it's
right.
like, well, you know.
Well, the whole idea is, if once you have a hypothesis formed, you're actually going to try to disprove it.
Yeah.
The motivation is to disprove it, and if you can't, then that makes it a good theory.
I was talking to Dr. Tim King about this recently. People's misunderstanding of Occam's razor.
The least,
where it's like
the simplest explanation.
But
is
it's
the right
not
one.
really that the simplest explanation is the right one. It's that when you've removed all other, you know, it's
so Occam's
it's like the most probable.
Occam's complete razor would be when you remove all other.
You're taking this razor and you're slicing away all this stuff that, like, well, that doesn't make sense.
Okay, so
that
what is the
sense.
entire razor?
The example that Tim gave on our own show in the past, I think, was about, he walks into his kitchen and he finds a sandwich with a bite taken out of it, but he didn't make the sandwich. So Occam's razor says, okay, well, somebody had to have made this sandwich. Now he can go through the process of who else had access to this kitchen.
Oh, okay.
Well, his fiance, maybe she made the sandwich. Or in this case, it was back when he was in an apartment. He's like, well, maybe, like, I don't know, my landlord came in, made himself a sandwich.
Took one
left.
bite and walked out.
Or there's some kind of alien being who teleported into my kitchen and made, you know, the sandwich. It's like, okay, well, which is the most probable? Well, we'll start with the fiance is the most probable. Occam's razor said, well, that's probably what it is then. You know, it's not the simplest solution. It's what is the most likely and probable to have happened. And that's probably never going to involve aliens or ghosts as being the most probable thing.
So then I guess what I'm understanding you to say is that you could apply the method of having a hypothesis and then trying to maybe disprove it, but you're probably never going to prove that ghosts exist because they are not repeatable and consistent and observable.
Yeah.
Okay.
And exactly. It's like, depending on who you ask, there's different criteria. Well, what is a ghost? Well, some say it's a soul. Some might say it's, you know, psychic imprints. Some might. So it's like, okay, well, which one of these? You guys there has to be a consensus.
Yeah.
It seems to me that that's sort of the trick with all of this is, and this isn't the only thing that's hard to study scientifically. There are other things in the world that are just difficult to study because they are so inconsistent.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah, and you can't really disprove something if you don't know what the parameters are, and if a ghost will maybe be there and maybe not at any point, then you can't reliably collect evidence. And you certainly couldn't ever disprove that there's a ghost if it's not gonna act consistently, and that's kind of part of the deal is that they don't.
Yeah.
So how would you know?
Yeah. So even though in hard sciences too, though, this problem comes up, at least like in physics, for example, there's stuff that's like, we can't observe that, but there's other evidence that infers it is testable, you know. I was thinking, like, when string theory first came on the scene, and so it's like, well, now you're just getting into religion. You guys are just crazy. That's like pseudoscience. There's no way you could possibly.
Well, it's theoretical physics definitely gets that way.
Physics, yeah.
But that's not to say there's nothing to it. But it's theoretical. That's why it's called theoretical physics. It's very very abstract. Yeah.
So instead of maybe parapsychology, it's theoretical psychology.
Right. Would that
honestly
changing the term make a difference in how people feel about it?
I think it would.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why it's
do.
called parapsychology. It was originally psychical research.
Right.
And like, well, people have a negative thought about that term, so let's call it parapsychology. Well, now it's okay. Now it's more like theoretical.
Yeah, theoretical psychology actually would be a good word for it if you want.
a more modern term.
I think so.
Yeah. And also, let's be clear again, though, that the parapsychologists aren't really interested in ghosts so much as it is psychic phenomenon. And,
right.
But in the case of a poltergeist, might actually, the theory is that poltergeists are a psychic influence from an individual, not really a ghost. It's psychic. And that some of the similar methodologies would overlap, I guess is why there's a course at this Parapsychology Institute on something related to ghost hunting, even though they themselves say we don't concern ourselves with ghosts.
Well, there's kind of three branches that the Rhine at least focuses on. There's apparitions, so kind of active ghosts. There's hauntings, which is sort of your stone tape theory, and then there's the ESP and the psychokinesis and all that. So they do cover, the ghost side of things to an extent. Yeah.
Ghosts, I don't know, man. I mean, I do know, but
you think you know.
I think I know. I've had in my past, there are experiences I've had which on the surface level I would be in my knee jerk reaction like, oh, that's a ghost. But then like on reflecting back on it and looking back at like, no, there's too many variables involved. There's a lot of plausible things that could have caused this to happen, and then add that to my overactive imagination that's already expecting and believes that ghosts are real. It's a confirmation bias kind of going on. I know early episode I talked about experience I had at a Scottish castle that seemed very spooky and haunting, and growing up at a haunted house. But yeah, these days, no, don't really believe it.
I had an experience, my earliest experience with ghosts was when I saw an apparition of a family member. And I know what I saw, but that's not good enough, right? Like that's the only evidence that we have for the existence of ghosts, is that people have these personal experiences and they are convinced. I am absolutely convinced of what I saw, but how can I use that as evidence to convince somebody else? It just doesn't hold up. So
yeah. We had a cat. It was my wife's cat, and she'd had it since it was a kitten. And it was, I think he was about 19 when we finally had to say goodbye to him. But for a period of time after, in the house, she would think she was seeing him around corners and stuff because she's so used to seeing that cat all the time that when you're not seeing it, your brain's like, no, that's outside of the normal parameters. I'm just going to plug that back in because it should be there. Right?
I had that experience with my dog. My childhood dog Spot. Yeah.
I'm not saying you didn't see your loved one, but there is, if you are missing somebody and in grief, was it close to when they died?
It was, yes, but the relationship was not terribly close where I would be like missing that person so much that I would fill them in,
Okay.
So
yeah.
But I think what you're saying really makes a lot of sense for pets. I think my husband had that experience with our cat as well. My husband, who was absolutely a non-believer, but same thing.
So when my sister passed away, after that, it's kind of like she was a real believer and got into did a lot of kind of psychic experimentation, and that's why I have a glow-in-the-dark Ouija board. That was hers, but I'm actually now living in the house that she lived in at the time she died. And I remember a couple of years ago, early in the morning, my wife and I are both getting ready for work. She's in the bathroom, I'm in the living room, and both of us heard what sounded like a female voice from the kitchen, which is equidistant between us, say the name Cody.
Oh, whoa.
And I was like, was that you? Did you say something? And she's like, no, but she heard it too. Right. And, initially I was like, dude, that sounds like my sister, but at this point my sister had been dead for over 10 years. So I haven't heard her voice. Well, now I haven't heard her voice in 14 years. But at this point, it was like closer to 10. So it's like, okay, do I really remember exactly what she sounded like? That can degrade over time, memories. But also we have at this point, we had 2 dogs in the house. And both of them are constant, what we call yowlers, when they kind of, or they whine or something. And I think Allison might have been using the hairdryer at the time. It's like, there's other bass noises. It could have been from the kitchen. One of the dogs made a noise. I heard it as my name because it's something kind of EVP phenomenon. It's like, it sounds familiar. It sounds suggestive. Maybe. And so looking back, like, do I think my sister's spirit was in the house? I hope not, because, there's some boundaries, sibling boundaries that are being crossed here, And beyond that, also, I don't want to think that she's just stuck hanging around. That's not, I personally, for myself, when I die, I much more prefer the idea that there's just nothing, it's just a light switch that goes off, than the idea that I'm stuck in a house that can be sold to some asshole in the future and just be stuck there with them. Because to me, that's hell. That's like, you might as well just be, purgatory. I guess that's one way of me to say, like, I don't,
well, and
it'd be nice, but no,
and
it wouldn't.
The word Cody is 2 syllables, so that would be hard, but not impossible for just a random set of noises to make that noise. Yeah. I hear Garth all the time.
Mm-hmm. I hear my name as well. Yes.
Yeah, 1 syllable.
Yes. Yeah.
Garth. I've had animals say my name.
Yeah.
I've had squeaky doors say it. It's because it's such a simple sound. Anybody yelling from across the way, I hear my name several times. Anything with an R, it sounds like my name. So
yeah.
Well,
Cody's
Cody,
a little trickier.
I think you demonstrated the hallmarks of a responsible investigator. To consider all the other possible options, especially if there's animals in the house. But also this idea that, like, maybe, your sister is stuck in the house. We don't actually know what happens after death, right? Maybe ghosts aren't stuck. Maybe they come and go. Maybe they choose to pop in every time.
I would hope so.
Right?
Yeah.
I like that version a lot better too.
Yeah, like you have the universe at your fingertips and you can just cruise around, and then every once in a while maybe swing by and say, "Oh, hi."
Yeah.
I feel like we had this conversation maybe in a Poltergeist, Garth. Was there something about somebody dying at sea? And it's like, okay, do you haunt the ship or are you stuck in that position in the middle of the ocean?
I think that's the question. So if a ghost is locked to the place they died,
or if a ghost is immaterial and the earth revolves around it, and they're like in the same spot, but like the surroundings change.
Sure. What if you died on a plane? Moving. So where's the ghost? There's a million weird situations where it's like, well, where does the ghost follow?
Yeah. I mean, we don't know enough about how ghosts work, I guess. Okay. Well, is there anything else we want to...
So we had you on to talk about these different classes you're taking. Are there any... We asked you about a couple of them. Were there any other interesting things you have learned in these courses that we never touched on?
I took the EVP, ITC, and other technologies course, and so that was really interesting because they did talk a lot about the use of technology and how there is no device that can detect ghosts because we don't know what ghosts are, right? You can only detect the environment and then use that as one like data point if there's something else going on. I think you kind of brought this up earlier, Cody. I can't remember in what context, but just this idea that to be scientific, you have to have a lot of technology. I think people conflate that a lot. In fact, I was reading a book by a TV ghost hunting personality. He was talking about bringing in the scientific method, and his whole idea is that he has a data logger and he has the recorder and he has the laser grid and all this stuff. To me, that's not necessarily science, right? Maybe you can talk a little bit about why not.
I'll bet it's impressive because it has all the trappings of a scientific instruments lend a credibility to a viewer. Like, oh, well, they must be knowing what they're doing because they're using all this fancy equipment. So I think it makes it feel more credible, even if it doesn't actually like help.
Yeah,
and I can edit it out, but is it Zach Bagans?
No, it's not. It's
Okay,
Brandon Alvis, the guy from the new Ghost Hunters. He's the tech guy on the new Ghost Hunter show. Yeah,
because for example, Ghost Adventures, they had a guy, I think his name is Bill Chappell, who was like, who just makes toys for them. He's like their the Lucius Fox to their Batman. That's what they like to think, right? Like he's just like, hey, here's a fun gadget, play with this. But they did they used to use this thing called a Mel meter, right?
Yeah.
And then they went and talked to the guy who made it, and it turns out like that story is just incredibly sad and depressing. It's a family whose daughter was killed in a car accident, and they just cannot let go. And so the dad has built all this equipment that he claims lets him speak to his daughter Mel, which is why they're called Mel meters. And in the episode, they like are at this people's house, and they're gonna like talk to her, and they bring in like through a Skype call. That's how long ago this was. Her sister, who like their other daughter, who's at college, and you can see in her face that just like it just is. It seems incredibly sad. Like, oh, we're here talking with your sister. She's with us right now, and it's just like, as somebody who has lost a sibling, if my parents were so focused on my dead sibling that I have been pushed off to the side, like that's just really, it's sad.
Yeah.
It's profoundly tragic on a human level.
Yeah.
But then but on the other hand, this family also thinks like, hey, the next step is we mass produce this shit and make some money. Right. It's like, yeah. But this idea of the scientific trappings in this equipment, I've said that we need some of this equipment for our own investigations, only because we can then use it in the parameters set by the people who believe in it, and then expose like why this is junk science.
And keeping an open mind, maybe we'll become true believers in the process. I don't want to go in with preconceived notions. That's no good.
Yeah, but on the one hand, it's like, I don't want to pay money for this stuff. Junk.
Right.
For example, the Ovilus device, which is just a random number generator that is then attached to a word bank. Mm-hmm. Random numbers, not replicable in any way. And this device can sell anywhere from their base model is like $500 to their premier model is almost $2,000 for a thing that is just my phone's ringing. A random number generator with some extra lights and a voice box put to it.
Well,
it's like, how does a ghost know how to influence random number generators? A living person.
The more expensive one has even more random numbers, so that's what you're paying for.
Yeah, right. It's got a different dictionary.
You want random numbers? You want them really random? That's going to cost a little extra.
I actually have a device. Where'd I put it? I usually have it sitting here for quick. Okay, here we go. This right here.
Oh, you brought that on one time in the past.
Yes, Garth has seen this once before.
I saw this once before.
We're not going to talk about that, Garth. But this is the Bakutan ghost detector. It's made in Japan. It uses a quartz crystal to power a random number generator inside, that then corresponds to a color on a little. The battery might be dead. Oh, and the battery finally died. You push the button. The light flashes of different colors depending on what parameters the random number settles on. That dictates what color, and it's anywhere from blue. It goes blue, green, yellow, red, and like purple. And supposedly that indicates what kind of spirit is around you. Is it malevolent? Is it good? Yeah, exactly.
That seems needlessly complicated,
right?
And ridiculous,
doesn't it?
But
Yeah.
Swap
it's a
out
Rube
the colors,
Goldberg machine. It's like, couldn't you just be more direct?
Yeah.
I mean, and this is like a keychain sized tchotchke from Japan. But if you swapped out that random color, to a word bank and a voice box, you could charge apparently almost $2,000 for that, and people use that consistently to say this is evidence of a ghost.
Right.
It's like you haven't illustrated at any point how that works.
Right.
Before I knew it was a random number generator, I used to think like, okay, so they're like, oh, they influence the energies, and that tells and then they can dictate what word shows up on it. That means that the ghost either has to know every word that's in that dictionary you have, and they have to know what energy frequency corresponds to that. But that means if you calibrated that device, did you have a ghost sit down with you and go over this whole process? It's like, no, there's nothing to...
I think, Cody, that there's an assumption that once somebody becomes a ghost, they have a more direct effect on the world without having to understand everything.
Then what's the
That's
point in being
convenient.
alive, Garth? If you get
It
magic
is,
powers
but
when you die.
Yeah.
I mean, you get magic powers when you die, but it just...
Well, in fairness to the
becoming
Brian, these are
material.
actually the same points that are brought up in these classes as well, like
Oh, okay.
looking at these pitfalls and the problems with them. So, yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, there's equipment. But there's also simple old school stuff too, like as simple as a key on a string to use as a pendulum. But that should let you find your way to things. There's looking through knot holes. See, nobody's using the old stuff anymore. It's all new shiny electric devices. But it's like, if you want to get old school on it, if it was good enough to see a ghost in the Victorian era, then I should be able to look through a keyhole and see a ghost now, you know?
Well, technology.
Yeah.
Technology.
Right.
Well,
go ahead. Go ahead, Garth.
Oh, I was gonna say, just as someone kind of outside of knowing about any of this stuff, I'd never even heard of the Rhine Institute. Is it called? Yeah,
Rhine Center.
The Rhine Center. I'm sorry. Yeah, I hadn't heard of the Rhine Center before, but it's nice to. From everything you've said, it sounds like they really are approaching it, even though they're believers, but they're like approaching it and looking at all of the shortcomings of these things. Like taking a real scientific approach to it is great.
And I think that's why I keep up with it. You know, if I had taken a class or two and it hadn't appealed to my more rational sense, I think I probably wouldn't have stuck with it. But I'm going to see this out because I'm interested, and it, you know, they're kind of speaking my language here. So,
and that's kind of where I fall personally. I too am a skeptic. I'm maybe a little less hardcore of a skeptic than you, Cody, but I don't know. But I do see a lot of value in, as long as you have the right approach, I think we should be researching everything.
Right.
You know, everything is worth looking into, and as long as you're being scientific about it, I not only don't have a problem with it, I am for it. It's great.
Yeah. As long as they don't start saying that you can heal people through psychic energy, then... I mean,
I think your problem with that is that people might do that as opposed to medicine that we know works. But in addition to, I mean, I don't know. Yeah.
Before we wrap up, I on our Discord. Shout out to the Discord if you're a listener and you aren't on our Discord. There should be a link in this episode notes. Come join us on the Discord. It's a great community of people who just like talking about this kind of stuff. But there was a request on the Discord that since this episode's coming out on Friday the 13th, and since we're also getting close to Halloween, we should do a Black Cat PSA to let people know at this time of year. There's a lot of black cats that are adopted from shelters and then quickly abandoned or let loose.
What?
Yeah, people want them because they're spooky, but you also find people who get them for more nefarious reasons. For magical rituals and stuff, but there's also the inverse is true. There's people who shun black cats at the shelters and don't get them. It's weird. You got people who get black cats, but for weird reasons, and then you got people who will not adopt a black cat because it's bad luck. And so you've got a lot of cats who are need a good home who don't get it because they are black cats. My mother-in-law probably could be considered a witch. She only exclusively adopts black cats. Right now she has 2 of them. And when I first met her, she had 2 different black cats. And older lady lives alone with black cats. So the PSA I guess that they want is, hey, let's get rid of the stigma. Black cats is cats too. They need homes. But also, if you're getting a black cat, make sure you're getting it because you want to be a good pet owner and not just because, it's edgy or, makes you fit in with your coven.
Good PSA.
That's great.
I hope that's what they wanted. All I saw was just said do a cat PSA, and I was like,
I think
I know what you're talking about.
He covered it. I was unaware of
Yeah.
any of that, so the PSA worked on me.
I think also, do
Yeah.
people seek out black cats around Halloween time to kind of harm them? I mean, if they're out roaming around
Yes.
and there's somebody's pet, in the front yard,
It's
do they?
fucking awful.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I remember that was, and I don't know how much of that was an extension of the 90s satanic panic, but there is a ghost town close by. And in the 90s, there were reports that there were people who were going there and killing black cats and drawing pentagrams and blood and stuff like that. I do not know how much of that was true. But there is this idea that, people will go out of their way to harm and mess with black cats close to Halloween specifically, and then also Friday the 13th.
So maybe.
Hey, real quick.
Oh, sorry. I was just gonna finish that off. Say maybe keep your black cat inside. Maybe keep a close eye on it. Yeah.
Yeah. Keep an eye
Yeah,
on
the
your cat.
Satanists are looking for black cats. Don't let your cat be victim.
I was just gonna ask. Friday the 13th, the film series, completely unrelated, but like, does Jason show up whenever there's a Friday the 13th, or is it a specific Friday the 13th? Because if it's the anniversary of when he died at a summer camp, then that has to be once every 7 years. Yes, Garth?
Yes, but if it's any Friday the 13th, it's once every 7 months, right? Because every month has a 13th, and randomly you'd have that be every 7 times.
Everybody just froze again in contemplation.
Oh, am I frozen still?
No, you're not.
Oh, okay.
Okay, well, with that unanswerable, ineffable question about Jason from Jason Voorhees.
You always want to end a podcast that's all about giving people information with an unanswerable question.
So yeah, we have a Patreon, everybody. If you like what we do, you can go and support us, patreon.com/leasthaunted. Right now we are doing a little patron drive. We're trying to get our patron numbers up. We have a few mini goals. We've been talking a lot about ghost investigations in this episode, and the mini goal is like, if we get to like 50 patrons, I will find a way to spend the night in some kind of spooky haunted location and try to live stream it or document the experience. And I'm thinking this might be, unless you're interested, Garth, for this mini goal, I will do this alone. So there's nobody with me in the spooky haunted place. If we get to 100 patrons, then we can afford to some of that pay for play action and take a trip to Virginia City and go to the Washoe Club, which is a world famous super air quote haunted location in Virginia City, and do an overnight there. So yeah, consider becoming a patron. And if you're really cool and you join at the Monster Squadron level, that makes you a producer, and you get your name read or recited. At the end of every episode. So without further ado, our Monster Squadron patron producers are Travis Alexander, By Barbarian, Rachel Krieger, Tom Dahl, Justin Duckham, Kelly Flynn, Gunnar Franks, Carla Harrington, Havelock, New Jared, Brian Lamb, TJ Levenhagen, Alicia Overton, Jordan Ramey, and Blue Roan.
Nicely done.
I was rooting for you. That was great.
Yeah, you could see his eyes were going different places to prove that he wasn't reading.
And, hey,
he has it memorized.
If we keep boosting this patron drive, maybe it'll get harder for me. I mean, it is getting harder, even though you think by now I should just have it completely memorized. I just second guess myself sometimes. Elizabeth, what do you got going on? I think we talked about it at the very beginning, but let's plug your talk again and your book.
All right. So the book is Haunted San Jose. It's available wherever you buy books, including at stores locally. I will be speaking October 21st at the Winchester Mystery House. So visit their website for those $5 tickets. And you can find me on Instagram at Haunted San Jose.
Sweet.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. It was a pleasure having you back, and I'm really looking forward to seeing your talk.
Thank you. Yeah,
I thought I was gonna be working and not make it, and then I found out when it was. I was like, I think I'll be there. I might have to duck out a couple minutes early, but hopefully not. Anyway,
it'll be nice. To
I'm
have
very
some,
much looking.
Yeah, friendly faces in the audience.
Yeah.
We'll just make sure that I get the T-shirts in the trunk of my car before you duck out.
That's right. Yeah, that would be not good.
Yeah. We have to do it off Winchester grounds, though. They probably were like, "Hey, what are you doing?"
Yeah.
So, again, thank you so much. You look forward to seeing you on Saturday the 21st.
Thanks again.
Am I overlooking anything, Garth?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. We'll edit that. Okay, well, so in that case, until next time, remember, the only thing that's haunted
is you.
Oh, nice. I always feel like I should let people know they're being set up, but everybody knows what to say.
Shocks. What are you trying to prove here anyway?
I'm studying the effect of negative reinforcement on ESP ability.
The effect? I'll tell you what the effect is. It's pissing me off.
Well, then maybe my theory is correct.
You can keep the $5. I've had it.
I will, mister.
The Least Haunted podcast is recorded before a dead studio audience and is a presentation of Sequoidea Productions LLC.